everybody right now could text into their division group chat, I know you have one, and get all of your fellow branches on tonight's call. This is a really big one, specifically asked for by the region managers. So I know that this is a big topic on their mind right now as we head into SC2 and in some regions SC3, or whatever you might be calling it at this point of the summer. But the big contest where you as a branch can sell alongside your team. We're heading that direction, and we have some rock stars on tonight's call that will be sharing with you how they've either, at this point, ran a really effective SC2 push while selling simultaneously alongside their team, or they're really well known for their personal sales ability, and they are actually going to be doing the branch and personal sales thing in the next couple of weeks here. So we've got Dillon Foley out of the Northeast region, and we've got Kyle Lopes out of the Western region. I'm sure many of you are familiar with their names. I would say they're a little bit vector famous. We have a lot of those people around our company, but these two definitely have got it going on. So I'd like to take a minute and just introduce both of them, and then we're just gonna dive right in. I don't really have many housekeeping items today, other than the fact that, as always, we have open coaching calls. What that means is that there is a link floating around the Vector universe that has my calendar on it. If you want to schedule a 30-minute coaching call, you are more than welcome to do that. It is free. I oftentimes have branches ask me, how much do I charge? The reality is I am a salaried Vector employee, and I am paid to coach you guys. So please give me things to do. I'm just kidding, I've got plenty to do right now. But that being said, there is plenty of time in my calendar for us to grab a 30-minute coaching call. I've got branches that pick multiple times per week, and I'm always here to help you out. So like I said, that link is floating around the Vector universe. You can find it in the Branch ImPACT Facebook page, or you can find it in the Vector BMDM support page. If you can't find it, but you want it, you can just message me and I will send it to you. All right, who do we have on tonight's call? I am so excited to bring to you Dillon Foley and Kyle Lopes. So who are these two guys, and why are they qualified to speak to us tonight? Well, let's start with Dillon here. So Dillon started with the company back in 2016, July 9th. So Dillon, we're coming up on your 4-year Vectorversary. And Dillon is one of those stories that circulates around the Northeast region every summer, right around this time, where the division manager is always, always, always encouraged to stay in the recruiting mindset, because your Dillon Foley might be walking through the door. So if you have any Northeast branch managers on this call, you've definitely heard his name thrown out there in the last couple of weeks about who you might be able to recruit in the next couple of weeks. Dillon Foley is an example of that. So like I said, he started in on July 9th, 2016. He had just graduated from Darien High School in Connecticut, and he was heading into his freshman year at Providence College in Rhode Island. He had a 23K fast start. How would that feel to have a recruit walk in your doors this week and go on to have a 23K fast start? Just think about that. He had a 28K SC2. He had a 25K first PDC. He had a 25K second SC2. He had a 30K SC2 as a branch manager, and that is 30K personally. And then he had a 99K, which I wish you would have rounded up to 100K, Dillon, come on now. 99K team push with about 15 to 20 reps on the team at the same time. So this guy not only sold 30K personally for SC2, but he led his team to $99,000 for SC2. That summer, where he won the Silver Cup, he had 37 recruits on the entire summer, which is not really a number we celebrate, but the fact that he was able to win the Silver Cup with that goes to show that he really understands PPR. He understands how to motivate reps, how to get them excited, how to get them focused on going after big numbers, which I'm sure many of you right now are thinking about your team. How can we get our teams to go after big numbers? It's easy for you as the sales rep to think big because you've just ran a branch office. Your job this entire summer was to think big. But how do you get your reps to think big? That is a question that Dillon can definitely answer. He's a 9-time All-American Scholarship winner. He's currently over $270,000 in personal sales and almost at $1 million in total sales. He is a current district manager, so he will be able to touch at great length about what his current plans are as we head into SC2. Then we have Kyle Lopes. Now, I know many of you know who Kyle Lopes is, and what you might not know, unless you've been looking at the Silver Cup report, because he has been sneaking his way up to that #1 spot, but Kyle is a branch manager this summer. But before we dive into what he's doing this summer, let's talk a little bit about what he has done up until this point. So Kyle started with Vector. After graduating high school in 2012, Kyle, we started the exact same summer, and it sounds like we are the same age, which is pretty cool. He sold 18K his first summer and then went to play semi-professional ice hockey for 3 years. He worked around his hockey schedule and every summer would dive back into Cutco, being an assistant manager over the course of 2 summers. In 2016, he then went to community college in San Jose, California, and while taking 22 units or credits, playing on 3 hockey teams, coaching a hockey team, and being in a relationship, that relationship part, that's key. He sold $267,000 and broke the all-time record for sales in a year by a full-time student, in the process of becoming the first student to win the CSP Silver Cup. The following year, he sold $272,000 while working 60% as much as the year prior. He transferred to Columbia University in New York City, where he graduated in May with Latin honors, 0 debt, which, by the way, for those that don't know Columbia University, it is absolutely one of the most expensive schools in the country. So graduating with 0 debt is incredibly impressive. And then over $100,000 in the bank. Let's just take a quick minute to pause and imagine what it could feel like leaving college, not only debt-free, but with $100,000 in the bank at what, like 22, 23 years old? That's insane. He sold $120,000 last summer, working 45 days in total, and became the first student in company history to reach the Hall of Fame. I am so thrilled to see so many faces on tonight's call. I can only imagine what is going to come from this call. And I'm going to ask one more time. Please shoot a text into your division group chat after now hearing Dillon and Kyle's bios. Like, how could the branches not be on this call tonight, especially as we head into SC2? And again, for some regions, it is SC3. So go ahead, shoot a text into your division group chat. Tell your fellow branches. And hey, maybe some DMs could benefit from this as well. Tell them to get on this call because we are about to hear some amazing stuff. We're going to start tonight with Dillon. So Dillon, I mentioned, you know, in your bio how you led your team in 2018 to a $99,000 SC2 push while selling $30,000 personally. So can you share a bit about your thought process from your first summer as a branch when you made the decision to commit to a big goal of $30,000 in personal sales?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the intro, Shelby. So, I mean, obviously there was a lot that went into it. It wasn't just one thing where I was like, yeah, this is why I'm going to do 30K. But a lot of it, you know, part of it had to do with just me and my personal goals. I was really like, all right, cool. Like, I've done a 28K push. I've done plenty of 25K pushes. Like, when can I finally break into the 30 range, right? And now that this was basically like the biggest push that we've ever had, like the longest push that we've ever had, it was kind of a really good excuse for me to do it. But, you know, aside from that, like, you guys can probably all relate to this. I'm sure you've gotten like dozens on dozens on dozens of PDI calls where people would be calling in and they're like, hey, just had a no sale. They had to think about it.
It was just getting good.
He's still thinking.
The guy's still thinking about it. All right, let's give him 10 seconds. And if he doesn't come back in 10 seconds, we're gonna go right over to you, Kyle, and we'll let Dillon figure out what's going on in his world. I'm gonna count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Somebody from the Northeast region, please text Dillon Foley and tell him that he has frozen and we're skipping him for right now. Kyle,
Already did.
oh, already did. Perfect. Kyle, let's go over to you with the badass background there. All right. So, Kyle, as you head into your next big push, and as you are a first-time branch manager, but a rock star sales rep, how are you balancing recruiting, managing, and selling personally? What is your game plan? Give us all your secrets.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on, you guys. It's a pleasure talking to y'all. For me, the main focus as a management group is going to be focused on recruiting. Being in the Western region, I know a lot of you on the East Coast and the Midwest, you guys jumped out to an early lead on us in recruiting, but we're trying to roar back and catch up to you. And so the focus for my group right now, we're in the middle of our SC2 push, is recruiting. How can we continue to maintain and sustain and continue getting double-digit recruits every week? And so that's going to be our focus for now, because I recognize that it's going to dry up inevitably. And so I'm going to try and milk it as long as I can. I'm in a territory that has been considered for the last 71 years as the worst territory in my division for recruiting. And so I place a major emphasis every week on driving it. And heading into our last push of the summer in a couple of weeks, I know that the free time that I have from doing less interviews, from having smaller training classes, from delegating more PDI to my AMs, and the creation of rep-led teams will open opportunities for me to meet with my personal clients. So for the moment, my focus is on getting my staff familiar and the up-and-comers familiar with and integrated into our team, so that there isn't a massive decrease in inefficiency when I begin to hand off and delegate the reins in a couple of weeks.
Okay, you said a lot of really great things there that we need to unpack. One of the things that you mentioned that's definitely a buzzword is rep-led teams. Can you elaborate a little bit? And you started to about getting your staff prepared, but can you elaborate how you're using your current team that you have to somewhat pick up the reins for you to an extent while you're able to go out there, meet with your clients, meet with your past customers, do sales, and still maintain a level of driving demos, driving sales on your team?
Yeah. So for me, I think you need to zero in on your top people, and your top people don't need to always lead the office in sales every week. I think that's a misunderstanding by a lot of managers. Is I don't need my top person to drop 10 grand every week. That's not sustainable. That's a lot of hard work. Instead, I need my top person to be enrolled. I need them to feel like they're bought in and they're part of the team, that they're making a bigger impact than just their own personal sales. And they're leading a team of other representatives that are looking up to them. And when they are able to generate $10,000 in sales from their team, that's a lot more valuable to our office than them generating $4 or $5 grand a week. It increases retention. It keeps people bought in. People stick around longer. We get more PRs. All of it stems from our top people leading the charge.
That was really good. Okay. I see that Dillon jumped back on here, but I just want to make a quick plug. There will be a Q&A session at the end. So as Kyle is speaking, as Dillon is speaking, if something sparks a question, put it in the group chat. And that way we know to go back to it, because I'm not going to be able to dive as deep with each and every answer that they give as I might want. So I'm leaving it up to you guys to ask the deeper questions at the end. We're all good on that one? Let's go back to Dillon. So just a quick reminder, Dillon, the question that you were at the very beginning of answering, you left us all on a big cliffhanger. Can you share your thought process from your first time when you made the decision to commit to a big personal goal of $30,000?
Absolutely. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, guys. You can imagine what it's like having a 25-person Apex and then having the internet cut out. Optimum is definitely not my favorite my favorite company at the moment. But I apologize about that. But yeah, obviously, you know, as I mentioned before, I hope you guys heard this, but it wasn't just one thing that really made me decide to dive all in and go for that gold. You know, it was definitely a culmination of a bunch of different things. A lot of it was just personal reasons, and you know, just the fact that I've gone after a 28K push before. I've had a 28.5K push before. I've had plenty of 20 something K pushes before. So why not now turn it on and decide to go into the 30s, right? Like, this was the longest push period that we were ever going to have. This was the year that they decided to extend SC2 to 23 days instead of to 18 days. So I was like, why not right now? It's not going to be that difficult. And, you know, on top of that, you guys have probably experienced this before with your team, where like they'll just call in for PDI and they'll just be like, hey, what's up? Just had a no sale. They had to think about it. They had to talk to their husband. And it's like, okay, great. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And so what you guys realize, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, but I'm not sure if you're really internalizing it, is just the fact that you get so much better at the sales rep job as you teach it. You know, and it's just like things that I may not have thought about on my demo if I was just a sales rep that summer, but things that I was coaching people to do, like handling objections or how to present things better, and just kind of go for those bigger orders and have a much bigger mindset and a much more stable mindset going into things. It really helped me out to kind of have that kind of skill set ingrained in me going into it, because I was just drilling it into everyone on my team. So I think that definitely helped me out in making that shift to make that 30K push. And that was definitely one of the reasons why I decided to go after it, because I was like, if I can lead all of these people to do X amount, why can't I do that myself? And why can't I show them how it's supposed to look, you know?
That's one of the big things that I'm sure your division managers and region managers have mentioned to you, but after a summer of teaching people how to sell Cutco, you become so much better at selling Cutco yourself. And sure, there might be some hesitation jumping back into the field or jumping into a virtual demo that you've never done before, but you've spent the entire summer teaching that virtual demo, and you might be surprised with how easily you handle objections, you show up confidently, you talk about your goals, because you're so much more ingrained and tied into all of that. So I love, Dillon, how you mentioned that. I want to stay on you for a second, because Kyle started to mention about how he's planning on managing his team as he also sells personally. But I'm curious, thinking back to that first branch summer for you, how did you prepare for managing both your personal sales and your team? So you went out, you sold big, you had a lot of confidence doing it, you wanted to show your team how it's done, but then how did you actually like physically manage both your team and your own personal demo at the same time?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I guess there's definitely a little bit more of the mindset side and how to attack that. And also there's a little bit more of the technical side of like, how do you physically, logistically manage 15 to 20 people while having your own business on top of that as a rep. So I guess I'll start with more of the mindset stuff, because I think that it's a little bit like, sounds kind of basic when I say it out loud, but just like we teach our reps, you know, you really just have to treat it like 23 one-day pushes. You know, it's not one 23-day push period. It's 23 individual one-day pushes, you know, where you just go after your best for every individual day. And if things don't pan out for one day, who cares? Your head hits the pillow, you wake up the next day, it's a new day. You know, you got to treat it like every individual day is its own separate push period, because number one, that's how your reps are going to thrive the most if you ingrain that into their head. But if you treat it like that yourself and how you manage your energy and your mindset and your mentality towards your representatives as well as towards your customers as the rep, that's really the biggest thing that you could do, is just treat everything as its own separate opportunity. Every day is its completely separate push period, and just give your best for every single day that you have on that push period. So that would be my biggest tip for the mindset side of it. In terms of like the technical skills on how to actually manage that many people on top of having your own business, I think a lot of it also comes back to getting your reps in like really, really drilled into their why and why they're doing this, why they're going after a big push period, and have them like have that why very, very close to their heart and very like to the forefront of their mind. So that way they can always draw from that, and they can always say, all right, this is why I'm doing this. And so that way you don't necessarily need to be a constant, influencer in their ear for why they need to attack this push. They already get it. You just build all that work on the front end and explain to them why this is so important to them and why this ties into their why, how they're going to look at the end of it. And sure, you're definitely going to have to put in some extra effort to coach them through the challenges and the obstacles during the push period. There's no getting around that. You'll definitely have to do that, but you don't necessarily have to be so on top of them as you have been all summer, because if you can just put in the work on the front end on this week specifically to get them ingrained into their why and get that really, really to the forefront of their mind, that's the biggest way that you could impact them and be able to manage them without micromanaging them.
It's powerful stuff, Dylan. Thank you. Now, you mentioned that you had a team of about 15 to 20 reps. I actually want to take a bit of that question I asked you and go back to Kyle, because I know, Kyle, I've been looking at your recruiting numbers, and you mentioned yourself, like, recruiting's been a big focus for you. And so I know that you've got a team that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's nearing 100 people. I think I saw that you recruited 22 last week or maybe the week before. And you had mentioned that you have team leaders. And I definitely agree with you that there's a lot more power in having a team leader generate $10,000 from their team than them themselves just generating $5,000. And I think Taylor Katie over here asked a great question in the group chat that I want to ask you directly, Kyle. Are you talking about PR teams or promoting a team leader and sectioning off big team into mini teams? How are you delegating certain people to certain team leaders? How are you working through your team leaders? Can you just touch a little bit about that team program?
Yeah, so I definitely can. So we have assistant managers. We have 3 assistant managers in our team, and 2 of them are in a little bit more of a full-time role. One of them is very, very part-time, and they all are sectioned off certain parts of the team. And so I have the top 30% of our organization, including all of our management, and then I section off the rest of it, and we sort of delegate just based on I can be blunt and transparent with you guys. Like, I would not spend my time with the lowest people on our team, because your time is a limited asset and a limited resource. And so the people that you're trying to save from dying and you're just trying to get them to do an order a week, I'm not going to spend time with them. That's just not not the way to be productive. It's not the way to be the most efficient. And so they're going to get my lowest AM, and they're going to get PDI'd a couple times a week. And if they quit, they quit. But I can't stress myself out about trying to save every single kid on my team. And so the biggest thing is making sure that you start from the top down. And so our AMs focus on our top people first every day. And so all of our people are accounted for based on those 3 breakdowns, or those 4 breakdowns, I should say. Then we have team leaders, and those are going to be our top reps. And our top reps are responsible for their own, like, little groups of people. And it's our job as managers to PDI everybody daily, but it's the team leaders' jobs to try and check in with people periodically, once every day or two, to encourage them with a text message, to try and get field training accomplished, to try and set up various activities that we do to generate PRs in our office. And so it's just trying to get them enrolled a little bit and get them groomed and feel like they're a part of the team process every time we do a key staff meeting and I talk about, hey, this is what we've accomplished so far for the week. This is what we're at. This is why you need to kill this phone jam and lead by example in the phone jam. It's making them feel like they're managers, even though they're not necessarily on payroll. And then after that, getting them groomed so that they can be promoted to AMIs.
Cool. Okay, great. So you had mentioned that, as a manager, it's your job to PDI every single person daily. Now, is that something that you and your AMs are kind of delegating, or are you yourself PDIing every person on your team, or is it just the top 30% for you personally?
I PDI the top 30% of our team. I handle all of the call-in, check-in calls that I can potentially handle. I close pretty much every single order for our reps if I have the time and I have the bandwidth to do it. And that way I'm maximizing CPO on every order. And the reason that I do that is because, 1, I'm committed to being, an elite office. And 2, I want to show my reps that if I'm asking them to work hard, I'm going to work twice as hard as them. You can't delegate and tell your reps to work hard and do a bunch of demos, and then you work 5 hours a day or 6 hours a day. It's an absolute joke, right? Mm-hmm. And so I work 12, 14, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like there are a couple people that messaged me so far and they're like, hey, can we talk a little bit later on? Yeah, we can talk after midnight tonight because that's when my last PC ends. So it's just making sure that, you buy into your organization more than your reps do, and your reps are going to follow your example.
Cool. You mentioned that what you just mentioned is really valuable when it comes to also managers personally selling. One of the beautiful things about getting into the boat with your team from a personal sales standpoint is all of a sudden you now get to show them what the expectations you've been trying to uphold all summer actually look like when they're exceeded. And what you will find from your team is that they'll start to look at you and be like, oh, wow, like I've been making 10 calls of phone jam. Like she just made 10 calls in the last 10 minutes. And all of a sudden the perspective shifts for your team as to what it actually means to be productive, as to what it actually means to sell at a high level. And that can be so powerful in itself as well. So that's something to look forward to as you jump into the sales boat with your team. Now I want to go back to Dillon and talk a little bit about what you had mentioned regarding the pivotal conversations that have to happen this week. Now, I understand that, again, we've got 6 different regions on here, potentially even 7 if you've got any Canadians on here. And so everyone's push time periods are a little bit different, but I know for a lot of regions, I think the SC2 push starts on the 13th. So this week is an incredibly valuable week for you to start eyeing up people on your team who you are targeting for alliances, who you are targeting as team leaders, who you are targeting to really go big. So Dillon, can you touch a bit on so Christian asked the question, I'll just ask his question. What were the PCs what do they look like, setting up this week? And what were the 2 to 3 key questions that helped you figure out their goals and the hot buttons and really what will drive them and their why going into the push period?
Absolutely. I love that question. Thank you for asking it, Christian. I think that is like you said, Shelby, the most pivotal thing that you could do, not only for your reps push, but for their career, is give them this specific PC. It's literally, you don't need to overthink it very much. I just do a normal schedule PC. We go over the alliance schedule. We go over all of their commitments throughout the week. We go over every single day individually as it comes up. Take 30 minutes, 20 minutes sometimes, and you just go through every individual day. Can you make this event? Great. Can you make this event? Great. Can you make this event? Great. And then if they can't, you work around it. But what kinds of questions do you have to ask them to get them thinking big about a big goal? Honestly, you don't have to ask very deep under the surface questions. A lot of the time your reps want to go big because they've been in front of your DVM and they've been in front of like all of these big, like the managers, all of the really influential people who are driving them forward and planting these seeds in their head already. You don't necessarily have to plant more seeds. You really just have to, I kind of want to say harvest them, but that sounds kind of weird. But you really just kind of have to like get those seeds out there, and you really just have to get them again to the forefront of their mind. So the way that you do that is you just do a normal scheduled PC, go through every individual day of the push and ask them how many demos they want to have for Tuesday. Okay, great. How many demos do you want to have for Wednesday? Okay, great. How many demos do you want to have for Thursday? You go through every single day of the entire push. And then if they want to have a different schedule, if they want to take off days, you guys understand how to build someone's schedule at this point. I'm sure you do. But the thing is that you have to realize is that your reps, they want to go big already, more than likely, because they understand what the push period means because they've just heard it so many times at this point. So what you have to do is you just have to go over what their push is actually going to look like on a day-to-day basis. And they really, really appreciate that. And then once you do get their schedule, you just do the math. So like, okay, great. So we've got 80 demos, somewhere between 80 to 92 demos in this schedule, Brian, right? So let's see what that's going to translate into for sales, given your closing ratio and given your average order. And then you just plug those numbers into your calculator and you actually come up with a number that is likely to pop out at the end of the push. And sure, it may end up being that number, it may not, but that is a baseline for them. And that's something that they have to work towards. And then at that point, once they have that number in front of them, very simple question. How does that feel to you? Is that a lot? Is that a little? Do you feel like you're working a lot with that? Do you feel like you could be leaving a little bit more out on the table? Like, how does that feel to you? And then they'll be real with you. You're not going to try and force somebody into working harder than they want to work. right? That's not what the push period is for. It's an excuse for them to challenge themselves. And if they want to challenge themselves, great. If they don't, not the end of the world. Not everybody is an alliance member, right? That's also something that you have to realize. So you want to make sure that you're tailoring that kind of PC to that individual. Make sure that you're listening to what they have to say, what they have going on throughout the push, and ask, literally, once you get that number at the end, just ask them how they feel about it. If they feel good about it, great. All right, let's figure out how to execute this schedule. Put the extra phone time in there, and then you literally just hammer home the details on how to execute that schedule every single day. That's pretty much the biggest advice that I would have on that specific PC.
Awesome. Thanks, Dillon. I'd like to add a few points to what he shared. Everything that he shared is fabulous. I would add an additional question into this PC, and there's a lot of different ways to phrase it, but the objective of this question is to help your rep understand that there's going to be obstacles that come up. So oftentimes the mistake I see a lot of branches make, and this is in their fast start, in their reps fast starts, in all different style of planning conversations, the mistake is that they take the reps' goals and they believe that the reps can do them without actually having the reps commit to them. So what I mean by that, I'm sure many of you have had a really excited rep tell you that they're going to go after a 10K fast start. And you're like, yeah, you can totally do it. And then you kind of leave the conversation at that. And the rep goes off thinking that a 10K fast start is going to be easy, I put that in quotation marks, but in reality, they go 0 for 6 their first 2 days and they quit on you. When in reality, they could have gone after a 10K fast start, but maybe you should have spent a little extra time asking them the question, hey, what obstacles might come into your way that we should talk about now so that we can make a game plan as to how you're going to overcome them when they do happen. And they might not have all the obstacles that could come in their way, but they might say something like, yeah, my mom is really nervous that this job's going to go over my life. Okay, great. I'm really glad that you brought that up to me. How might we be able to overcome that if that were to happen? And then you might be able to throw some things out there and say, hey, listen, I know that you want to go after a 20K push. And after looking at your schedule and looking at the number of demos that you want to commit to doing, like a 20K push would be like the absolute minimum, honestly. But I know that where we're sitting right now, it all seems like it's totally doable. And I'm never going to tell you that it's not doable, but I will tell you that it's going to be challenging. There's going to be days when they don't go the way that you planned. And you want to do 80 demos in the next 20 days, great. What if you go 0 for 10 your first 10 demos? Not saying that's going to happen, but what if it does? How will you respond? And so asking that question, however you want to ask it, or maybe it's a series of questions, but helping your rep understand that their goal is 100% attainable, but it's important to recognize that it's not going to be easy and that there are going to be challenges, and the challenges are not designed to take them out of the game. They're just designed to make them grow. And so when you can create the action step on the front end of how they're going to overcome that challenge, then when the challenge does arise, because we know that as much as we want reality to be perfect, it isn't. Hello, coronavirus, right? When that challenge does arise and your rep begins to bring in some excuses, you can say, hey, we talked about this. We already have a game plan in place. You told me that if you happen to have a day where 8 of your 8 demos all cancel on you, you're just going to come in and phone, right? So having that conversation on the front end can really give you leverage to continue pushing them when crap hits the fan. Kyle, I wanted to go over to you here and see if you had anything to add to the initial question about pivotal conversations to have with your people as you go into a push. And maybe you can pull on some of the conversations that you had with your managers in the past when prepping for a big push.
Yeah, so I think a couple key things to cover with representatives is like setting the expectation of what a push period looks like, right? Letting them know that, hey, during a push period, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so making sure that, hey, going into this next 17-day period, you're going to have 5 really amazing days, right? If you work hard for the next 17 days straight and you apply the same consistent work ethic for the next 17 days, you're going to have 5 amazing days. You're going to have 6 average days. You're going to have like 2 totally crappy, sucky days. And then you're going to have 2 days that are going to be wild cards. And that's going to be totally dependent and predicated upon your response to how things unfold that day. It can be an amazing day, it can be an average day, or it can be a crappy day, and it's all up to you. And the great thing is you never know which day is which. And so if you have a great day, you have an amazing day, that could have been a wild card day and you made it a great day. And so you need to show up every single day giving a 10 out of 10 effort, because you never know which day is which. I think another thing is letting your reps know in advance, hey, not all your customers are going to buy on the first day, the first time they see it. And that's fine. Sometimes they will buy on the first day and they will buy, but they won't buy everything. And that's fine too. And so for me, last summer I had a 50K push, and I sold 10 grand on the last day of the push. The reason that I sold 10 grand wasn't because I did 20 demos that day, but instead I was very diligent about keeping track of what my customers were interested in that they didn't purchase, and then following up with them all day that day. And so I let my reps know in their fast start and during push, keep track of what your customers are interested in. Ask them questions that give you permission to let you follow up later on. The other thing that I would say about a push period is just making sure that they're always constantly checking in, that they're holding each other accountable. I set up accountability buddies in my office. And yes, I know accountability buddies, it's a very cute term. Everybody likes it. And the reason why is because, and I tell reps, like, this isn't for you. This is for your partner. Okay? Don't be selfish. Reach out to your friend, reach out to your partner, check in with them every single day, multiple times a day, because at the end of the day, like, this isn't for you. This is for them. And we're a team here, and we take care of each other, and we care about each other, and we want each other to do well and make as much money as possible and have the best experience possible. And so the reason that I matched you both is because you guys both have similar goals and similar personalities, and you also really specialize in different areas, and you can help each other. This is a symbiotic relationship. And so matching people up and then making sure that they're actually following through with that commitment, making sure that it's not a one-sided relationship. I think those are a couple of things that really helped me and have also, helped our reps so far this summer.
I love what you just said at the very end about accountability buddies. Yes, it's a great term, but I think the real nugget there, Kyle, is the one line of, hey, this is not for you, it's for them. Because that responsibility right there oftentimes is all people need to be held accountable, in the sense of believing that it's their duty to show up for the other person. Because how often do we do more for our friends than we do for ourselves? I mean, it comes up in so many different ways. And so this is a really valuable way to help people truly hold not only themselves, but each other accountable. So I love that. All right, so there's a couple of questions that have come through in the group chat that I had written down ahead of time. So Dillon, I want to go back to you and just kind of talk a little bit more about your experience, having gone through a big push period and managing a team at the same time. How did you manage PDI calls while you were on demos? Did you have a system in place for that, or did you excuse yourself from demos? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, for lack of a better term, I really was just going all out with everything, and I didn't really have a system in place, to be completely real. I would get maybe like 3, 4, 5 PDI calls while I was on a demo, and just as soon as I leave the house, just call them all right back. That was pretty much the best that I could do. My reps understood at that point that if they had an emergency, they could either text me, or they could call they could call one of the assistant managers, or they could call like Kyle, the DVM. They could call a lot of different people. More often than not, they were just calling me to check in, like, go over, this is how everything's going right now. This is where I want to be. This is how you can help out, stuff like that. So they understand that if it's emergency, they have other resources available to them at the time. But, the biggest thing that I would tell you guys is it may not be the answer that you want to hear, but you're going to have to be very intentionally unbalanced over the next few weeks. There's going to be a lot that you think that you're not going to be able to do, but you will be able to do it if you just put all of the time and all of the energy in that you possibly can. Like I mentioned before, and Kyle also touched on this a bit, but you got to be really treating everything like you got to be treating everything as that you're doing for the next 23 days as 23 individual one-day pushes. Like Kyle said, we work 12-hour days, we work 14-hour days, we work a lot, and you're going to work a lot over this push. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You are going to work harder than you've ever worked in your entire life. If you get to the end of the push period and you don't fall down physically to the floor, you did it wrong. You need to have that feeling. Otherwise, that there was definitely still some effort left out on the table that you could have given to your team. So that's the biggest thing that I want you guys to realize is it's going to be tough. You can't really, there may be some systems in place that you could use to help kind of ease the flow of PDI. Like I said, with extra resources around the division to help out. But on top of that, I really just want it to be very clear that you guys are going to have to put in much more effort than you're expecting over the next few weeks to be able to field all of those PDI calls and to be able to influence your reps in the ways that you want to do it. But it is all going to be worth it in the end. We wouldn't do any of this if it wasn't worth it, but it is the most rewarding and fulfilling feeling to get to the end of SC2, knowing that you left everything out on the table and that you were intentionally unbalanced during this push period. So that way you can take a little bit of time off in August too. You're human. Like, we get it. I took time off in August too. I took almost all of August off. I wouldn't recommend that, but definitely being intentionally unbalanced during the push period. So that way you're just giving uncommon amounts of effort to your team, whether that means you're calling them for PDI at like 9 o'clock at night, or whether that means you're calling them for PDI at like 10:30 at night. I've done all of those things. You guys can all do those things. Just give as much energy to your team as you possibly can. That's the biggest tip that I have for you.
Thanks, Dillon. One quick tip off of the whole PDI question, and this is something that before you implement it, I'd like for you to run this by your DVM, because not every DVM is going to totally be a fan of this, but some might be, and there might be some situations where this can work for you. But I have witnessed branches kind of creating like a phone tree, in a sense of, hey, if you can't reach me during SC2 because I'm in a demo, the next person you call is this person. And then that same branch has you on their phone tree. Again, before you implement this, I would run this by your DVM, make sure that they're okay with it. But it could be effective depending on your situation. So that's one thing to consider. All right, let's ask a few more questions regarding like the balance between management and selling. And then I actually would like to spotlight Kyle and have him share a few tips on creating really big personal push periods, because I know there are, definitely branches on this call who are more focused on selling personally, hi Luke, than they are selling, with continuing to recruit with their team and managing their team. So we will touch a little bit on just personal sales, not 101, let's call it like a 501. It's like an MBA course in this, and we'll highlight Kyle there in a second here. But I want to go back to Dillon, and I'm curious, Dillon, what challenges, so thinking back to the push period in 2018, what challenges did you have to overcome that you didn't foresee ahead of time that might be helpful in sharing with the group now so that they can prepare for those challenges?
Yeah, I've got definitely a big challenge that I faced during that push period. So we had obviously the all-day Sunday phone jam, and then the next day we had our division meeting where, of course, there was another phone jam built into it right at the beginning. And then immediately after that division meeting, I lost all of my recommendations, every single one of them. All I had to my career at that point was the 33 demos that I had lined up the past 2 days. So I essentially had to rebuild my career from scratch using those demos to build recs. And obviously I just had a very, very heavy recs focus on that first couple of weeks to build that back up. But, that's not to say that you can't just still sell big while you still have a very heavy Rex focus. But, that was definitely just the biggest problem that I faced. You got to be ready for if you accidentally drive away from a location with your rec notebook on top of your car, which is what I'm assuming happened, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll never know for real. I'm kind of convinced that the DoubleTree Hotel actually just stole my rec notebook, because that would make way more sense to me, but who really knows? I'm not really sure what happened to that, but you got to be prepared to have those extra systems in place. I'm not saying that you guys are going to lose your rec notebooks, obviously not. Excuse me, but you really got to be ready for every eventuality, because sure, it was a pain in the ass for me to dig back in and really like get all of those extra recommendations. But I mean, I guess what I want you guys to understand from that is that even though you may not be able to foresee those kinds of challenges and prepare for like losing your rec notebook, there's always there's always a way for you to succeed in the face of that kind of challenge. There's always going to be a way for you to get around that, whether you see that right then and there or whether you don't, and you need to reach out to your accountability buddy, or you need to reach up instead of reaching out to find that solution. There is always a solution. I'll tell you guys that right now. You just may not see it immediately. If you guys were not confident in your ability to coach your reps through any challenge, any obstacle, any situation that they've faced so far, like if you can do that, you can certainly coach yourself through these obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember, going back to some of what I shared regarding the pivotal conversations leading up to SC2, if you are taking the time to have your own reps brainstorm what might be some obstacles. Now, I understand, by the way, like it's interesting for me to share this tip about, thinking through obstacles, because we so often want to just focus on our strengths, right? We just want to focus on all the positives that are going to happen. But this is a really good way of just prepping yourself mentally. And there's a saying, and I might butcher it, but it's like expect the worst, hope for the best, or something along those lines. And the idea here is that, you want your reps to be like a well-oiled machine going into this, and knowing that if they happen to break down, there is a plan of action to follow. Same thing goes for you during SC2. You want to be mentally prepared and think through what might be some of the obstacles that I could face, and how do I plan on overcoming them? What happens if my alliance, two of the alliance members happens to quit? How am I going to replace them? Asking yourselves these questions on the front end can be extremely helpful in creating a plan of action for the case that it does happen. Now, hopefully it doesn't, but a lot of what Dillon just shared all of what he shared is really, really great advice. And I appreciate you sharing the story about the rec notebook. I'm sorry that happened to you, but it sounds like it didn't really affect you very much. So great way to overcome adversity there. Okay, I'd like to just quickly look at this group chat here. One more question if we have time. All right, we'll answer that question, Christian, throughout the next part of this conversation here. We're gonna segue slightly into personal selling. I'm just curious, Dillon, are you personally selling during this push, or are you just focusing on managing your team?
I'm just focusing on managing. I might do a couple demos here and there for some past customers, but that's probably it.
Okay, cool. As a DM, that's what's most likely for most people. Okay, let's go over to Kyle now. We talk about time management, Kyle. I want to just get your basic tips from a personal sales standpoint. You've always operated at an extremely high personal sales level. Can you touch on how you traditionally prep for big push periods? What does it look like from a scheduling standpoint, phone jam standpoint, all that good stuff?
Yeah. Shelby, do I have screen sharing privileges?
I think so.
Okay. This is what my calendar looks like, guys. And you can see a lot of stuff overlaps. This is every single week, right? And the reason that I have it set up this way is because this allows me to be extremely diligent and efficient with my time. And so in life, Elon Musk separates his calendar into 10-minute increments every single day, 10-minute increments. Now, I'm not going to do that. That's way overkill for me. But I'm going to separate my day into 15 or 30-minute increments for sure. And we're all, for the most part, college students or went through college. And you know those kids that went to the library, 2 different kids studying for the same test. And one kid went in there, it was going to take 3 hours to study for the test. They cranked it out in 3 hours. They put their phone away, they put it in their backpack, they didn't check Insta or Snap or anything like that, and they busted their ass for 3 hours and they studied and they got an A on the test. And then you have the other kid that went in the library at the same time and took them 12 hours to study for the same test. And that's because they had to go to Starbucks and get a drink. And then their friends came in, they had to like shoot the shit with them, and they had to go to the bathroom 12 times. And it's just like, are you being diligent with your time? You're accomplishing the same amount of work, but it's taking you 4 times the amount of time. And so if you set a schedule, you set a calendar, and you treat your calendar as gold, that schedule is gold, and you don't let things bleed into one another, then you can achieve maximum efficiency with your time. And so for me in a push, it's like making sure that, I'm sure you've all heard the analogy of the jar, and you put the big rocks in first, your phone jams, your team meetings, any region calls, stuff like that, the things that you absolutely have to be on. Then you put in the little pebbles second, and that's going to be your PDI of your team, right? It's going to be any type of base pay entry, stuff that you have to do that's like definitely has to happen, but doesn't have to happen at that exact second. And then you put in the sand, and that's going to be, your demos and stuff like that. You're going to be able to see on your calendar what available time you have left, and you're going to be able to fit in demos and maximize your calendar that way. And the last thing is going to be the water. And that water is to fill in any type of like remaining last little gaps in that jar. And that's going to be you watching Netflix, you hang out with your friends, you messing around on social media, stuff like that. I can tell you in the last 2.5 months, I've watched under 20 hours worth of Netflix/movies. There are a lot of you that watch more than that in a week, right? And there's a reason that I do that. It's not because I don't like having fun. It's just because I'm more committed to my goals. And I don't let things bleed on my calendar. I don't watch a movie if I don't have it put in my calendar. If I don't schedule free time, I don't have free time. And so that's how I'm able to achieve maximum efficiency. And that's how I'm able to make sure that, when I'm following up with customers, when I'm following up with reps, I have PCs scheduled. They go right in my calendar right away. And when a friend asks me, hey, do you want to go to a party? Hey, do you want to go to a movie? Hey, do you want to go out to a barbecue? Stuff like that. I'm able to be like, hey, no, sorry, I have 4 meetings that night. I'm tied up until 11:45 p.m. I know the exact minute that I'll be free.
Diligence is key. Thanks, Kyle. I'd like to actually address the question that Christian asked, but in a slightly different way here, specifically for you, Kyle. What is your game plan on transitioning from traditional in-home presentations to mainly virtual presentations for the push?
That's a good question. So I think with the virtual demos, we have an unbelievable opportunity. Like, I want everybody to understand that this is not a hindrance. This is an incredible opportunity. You all should ship 10 to 30K during push. And if you don't, you didn't work hard. I just want to be very clear about that. And so before, historically, we've had to drive to people's homes. We've had to sit in traffic. We've had to field PDI calls in the car, driving to an appointment, trying to find the address, driving by the wrong street on accident, right? Standing on their porch, they didn't show, you got a no sale, you got to drive all the way back to the office. Now you sit in your room and you call the customer, and if they don't show up, now you have an extra hour to do phone time. Now you have an extra hour to do PDI, right? And so you all should ship 10 to 30K, 100%. And so the way to do that, if you feel like your leads are stale, if you feel like you don't have leads anymore, call your past customers. Get more recs. Check in with people.
I think it's important to remember, guys, that, in the past when you got recs, I would imagine 80% of you just asked for recs in specific areas that were within driving distance for you. Maybe they were the best areas that were within driving distance, but now you can call your people back and be like, hey, Mrs. Jones, I know that, I asked your people in Bucks County, but now I'm wondering, like, do you know anybody that lives in Hollywood Hills? Like, do you know anyone that lives in Silicon Valley? Like, what about whatever the other wealthy parts of the country are? You can specifically target the wealthiest parts of the country now through calling back past customers, which was not really a focus of ours in the past, because in the past, sure, could we have done that with virtual demos? Absolutely. But it wasn't a focus that our managers put on us, because for some reason we believe that the virtual demo was less than the in-home demo. But what Kyle is sharing is that's not, and we're seeing through results that it's not. And so guys, don't miss out on the opportunity to call back. And I would even, if I were you, look up what are the top 20 most high income level areas in the country, and start prospecting in those areas, because you have every ability to get into those areas based on the questions that you ask of your past customers. Kyle says, don't ask for Rex in the Silicon Valley. That's my area. Well, Kyle, looks like you're gonna have some competition this summer, bud. All right, let's go back over to some questions here. Kyle, what might be some areas of strength that you'll be leaning on as you begin to expand your focus from not just recruiting and managing, but to now all of that plus sales?
Yeah, I think, an area of strength for me, I made a conscientious decision after my second summer working here that I was no longer going to treat this job like a hobby and more like a real job. And that was a defining moment in my Vector Cutco career, because I finally understood that if I approach this as an entrepreneur and I really took this seriously, this is my business and I'm going to brand it that way, then I need to put in the same amount of work that a real small business owner puts in, right? The people that work 40 hours a week, those are employees. Those aren't business owners. Business owners hustle. A lot of you know business owners, and they're putting in 60 to 80 hours a week, every single week. And so for me, an area of strength was making that decision that I was going to treat this like a real job, and I was going to really embody the idea of having a summer startup or having just a startup in general. And so, I decided not to give it my 50%, but to rather give it 100%, because what's the point? It's a waste of time, in my opinion, if you don't. And so just branding myself, right? Creating systems, making sure that my customers, they know me as Cutco Kyle. And you all laugh and think it's funny, but I cannot tell you how many times customers call me years later and they're like, hey, Cutco Kyle, are you still selling Cutco? And I'm like, heck yeah, I am. And so branding yourself. I know all of my customers, because I follow up with them every single month, and they're going to get another email tonight from me for the first time in July. They know that I just graduated from college debt free. They know that I have a list of everything they've ever purchased in my database, in my CRM, and I'm able to help them out. They get postcards, they get monthly content emails from me, they get biannual sales emails, they get catalogs, they get phone calls, they get a video text message from me during the holidays that says hi. And they get to see my face and me smiling, and me showing them how an ice cream scoop works at getting the seeds out of squash. And so because of that, I'm willing to invest a lot in my marketing, and I trust that I'm skilled enough to make that back plus extra. And I feel like that's one of the biggest strengths of my business.
I love that. That's a huge, huge key right there, guys. Just like in general with your career here at Cutco, whether it's just through college or it's beyond, it's really helpful and really valuable to stay in touch with your past customers. And something that just kind of sparked in my mind, and this will work in some cases, it won't work in others, but if you have a rep that decides to quit or leave and they're leaving on good terms, the question you might consider asking is, hey, would you mind just doing an intro email to all of your past customers? Because I'm going to be the point of contact moving forward for all of them in this territory. And so now you're getting an intro email, and you can even type up the intro email yourself and have that particular rep send that mass email out with you CC'd on it. And then you can send a follow-up, hi, it's really nice to meet you. I'll be your point of contact in Cutco moving forward. If you've got any questions or you're looking for any service or gifts moving forward, I'd be happy to help you out and give you a great deal. That's something that you definitely can do with some of your reps who are deciding that Cutco is not for them and they're leaving on good terms. And again, you've got to ask for permission before you do that, and they have to be the ones to make the introduction. But Kyle, thanks for sharing a lot of that. I would love to end on time here, but I do want to ask Dillon one last question, and then I don't know if Kyle and Dillon have the ability to stay on for a couple of minutes to answer any questions and answers here. But while Dillon is responding to this last question, any additional questions that you guys have, please put in the group chat here. So Dillon, I know that you're not selling personally this summer, but what would be one last piece of advice that you might give to somebody who is in a similar shoe as you were, where they're looking to go big personally, and also managing a team of 20, 25, 30?
Yeah, I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but the biggest thing that you can do is just treat every day as like its own separate push. If you don't fall down at the end of the push period and you are just exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, you did it wrong. You need to leave everything out on the table. And just like you're telling your reps, it's going to be hard. It's going to suck sometimes. But there's also going to be plenty of times where you're just on cloud nine and you're riding such a high because somebody on your team just sold an ultimate, and then somebody else just sold a cookware set, and then you just sold like a signature set. And it's crazy. So my biggest advice to you guys would just be, don't ride those lows and ride those highs. You want to make sure that you're consistent throughout and you are constantly treating every day that you have like its own independent day and like its own independent push period, right? Because your effort and your energy, that's going to be the one thing that your reps can rely on to be consistent throughout that push period, because they look up to you. You are their leader. So it's very, very important that you guys do not ride the highs and ride the lows, just like you tell them not to do. You want to make sure that you're treating every day of the push period like its own day, like its own separate push period. Because when you know and you can confidently say that you left all of your energy and all of your effort out on the table, you're going to be thrilled with where you land no matter what the number is.
Thanks, Dillon. All right. I'm going to quickly touch on Will's question. I could get in trouble for telling you this, but it really just depends on how sick you are. If anyone gets coronavirus during this push period, you should probably, take the doctor's recommendations and rest in bed, depending on, again, how sick you are. But I probably, in my position, can't give you tips and advice on that. That would be a conversation you need to have with your DVM and yourself, because if you're really, really, really sick, I'm someone who would err on the side of care for your body and for yourself. But maybe you can have a private conversation with Lydia, who I know was really sick last year, and she can share with you what she did specifically. But hopefully everyone can, load up on vitamin C and be healthy during this push period. Kyle, there's a question for you here in the group chat. When in your career did you decide to invest more in customer retention?
Yeah, so I decided to invest in customer retention, I think, after my second summer here. I think my first summer here, like most kids, I showed up because my mom got a letter in the mail and she made me go to an interview, and I just wanted to play video games all summer. And so I was like, yeah, I don't really plan on doing this longer than August. And then I did it for a little bit in the fall and the spring when I was playing hockey, and I came back my second summer and was an AM, and that's when I made, a good amount of money that summer. I think it was like 10 grand. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like I could actually stick around and do this for a little while. And what I realized is you have all the top people in the company, all the CSPs are saying, hey, get a CRM. Hey, market to your customers. Hey, check in with them. And who am I to try and reinvent the wheel? We tell our reps to follow the manual all the time. Why wouldn't I follow the manual of the top reps in the company? And so because of that, was it scary for me to invest money? Yeah, 100%. My first summer, I started during SC1. I had a $5,700 fast start, had an 8K push. And then my second push, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to sell 10K. And I had an 8K push again. And then I came back my second summer and I was like, all right, I'm going to sell 10K even though I'm an AM. And I had an 8K push. And I was like, there's just no way to sell 10K in a push. That's impossible. Like the only people that sell 10K in a push is because they have super wealthy parents that buy 10 grand. They just don't do it. And my manager, his name is Mike Schmid. He asked me that a C2 push, I said, my goal is to sell 10K. He's like, is it your goal? Are you committed to it? And I said, well, I'm going to try my best. I can't control if people answer the phone or if people pick up, but I'm going to work really hard and do as many as I can. And he's like, I'm sorry, that wasn't my question. Are you committed to the goal? And I was like, dude, like I can't control if people don't buy. And finally he was like, Kyle, if you're not committed, just say you're not committed. And that was when I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm committed to this thing. And he's like, why do you want to hit it? and he made me identify my why. And it was purely income driven. Like I needed to buy a new car. And then he's like, great. How much money do you have in the bank? I was like, I have $350. And he's like, I want you to write me a check for $1,000. And if you don't hit 10K in sales, I get to cash the check. And then he stuck it on the back wall of the office with a little thumbtack. And every single day during Morning Alliance, I walked in the office and I looked at this $1,000 check. And I'm sitting there like, there's no way in hell I can let this dude cash this $1,000 check because it's more than I have. And that push, I sold 8K the first week. I sold 16K overall. And it was a huge mental barrier that was broken for me. And so I realized during that second summer that like, hey, I should take the advice of people that have been here and done this already. And that's when I decided to start investing in our customers, because I realized that I should have done it a year and a half earlier.
Thank you. That's great, Kyle. All right. We are officially 7 minutes over time here. I don't see any other questions in the group chat. This has been recorded, so if you'd like to rewatch to get more of the nuggets, please do so. But thank you everybody for joining us tonight. And again, if you'd like to schedule some one-on-one time from a coaching perspective, I'm going to put my calendar link right now into the group chat, and you can grab some time on the calendar. I update every Monday, or actually I update every Thursday for the following week. So feel free to grab some time there. Just choose the one-on-one coaching call. There's another one there, but you'll know which one to pick. Okay, everybody, have a great night, and I'll talk to many of you later on. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Shelby. Bye, Kyle.
Oh, bye,
Thank
Luke.
you guys. Bye,
Bye,
Benji.
Luke, I saw you lurking in the background quite a few times during the call.
He works at my office, so.
Well, hello. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.